Hello, YouTube. I would like to start a series where I share with you all of my findings on music production and sound design. And I want to start things off with what I deem to be the most important aspect of production, which is the fundamentals. So I'm going to go over the fundamentals of synthesis today and just go over the basic shapes and envelopes, which is crucial to get right in order to create the sound that you're after. So without any further gilding of the lily, let's jump right into it. Okay, so here I have an instance of Serum. I'm just going to use this synth because it's very visual, so it's very easy to understand what's going on. I'm going to start off with the oscillator, which is the sound source. Now, a speaker represents a waveform. The way that it does that is the speaker cone vibrates and it displaces the air molecules around it that then crash into other air molecules in a domino-like fashion until it reaches our ears, which is then interpreted as audio. So here we have the basic shapes, which are like the primary colors when it comes to synthesis. We have a sine wave, which is just a single harmonic, purest tone there is. And then we have a saw wave, which has all the harmonics in, and it's got this odd series of harmonics. And then we've got a triangle wave, which has got even order harmonics, but it's not quite as full spectrum as this next waveform, which is a square wave, which has also got even harmonics, but it's much fuller in its spectrum. And these waveforms are repeated many times over in a second, based on which note is being played. Humans can perceive sound from 20 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz, which is quite a range to be playing with. The next stage of synthesis is filtering, which can cut away existing harmonics in a waveform. There's various different filters, but I won't go into detail with that at the moment. I'd like to instead move on to a very crucial part of creating a sound, which is the envelope. And that is basically the shape of the sound over time. And this has a massive impact on the overall sound you're going for. So an envelope here, if I assign it to the volume of the waveform, has an attack, which is how quickly the volume reaches 100%. So that's immediate. And then if I extend that, you can hear how it then fades in. And the different curves give you different characteristics. I find that a good way to think about it is that these exponential kind of curves give you a sort of whip-like characteristic, whereas the logarithmic curve is a much softer fade in, which is really useful for more atmospheric elements. The decay is how long it takes before it settles at a certain volume. And the sustain is what volume it's held at when I keep pressing a note. So if I take this all the way down, we'll have a much sharper sound. And the release is how long it takes before it reaches zero once I've let go of the note. This shape is really important to get right in order to get the sound you're after. So if I attach this onto the filter here, I can then have it so the frequency content changes over time, and that is a huge part of designing any sound. moving on, I'm going to quickly go over LFOs, which is essentially an envelope that repeats over and over. LFO stands for low frequency oscillator. So like these oscillators that are generating the tone, it's a repeating cycle, except it's happening at a much slower rate. So it's not audible, but more rhythmic, because pitch and rhythm are actually the same thing, just at different rates. For example, if I were to attach this filter to the LFO, we have a repeating cycle here, and we can now alter the rate of this repetition. The shape of it also is massively important. So we've got this exponential curve thing going on, which gives it that lovely whip. We also have the option to select triplets or even dotted patterns, which gives you a really nice syncopated groove. If you have different shapes on the volume and filter, then you can achieve very different results. So sometimes if I've got an exponential curve on my filter, I like to do the opposite on my volume. And by the way, I'm holding Alt and dragging the points to move the curve of all the points, which is a very useful little thing here. So if I have this logarithmic curve on the volume, it allows me to hear what the filter is doing a lot more clearly. Whereas if I have an exponential curve on both, it's a much shorter sound, and I can't hear the accentation of the filter as much. So just keep that in mind. And another thing that we can do with these LFOs, which is very cool, you can create stepped-like patterns by holding Alt and Shift and then clicking on the points. You can change how these look by changing them to either ramp up or ramp down. And then once again, Alt to change the curve of everything at once. And one last thing is that you can change the rate of these LFOs as you go along. So let's say if you have just a pluck going on this filter, you can turn off this BPM sync function, which changes it to a Hertz value. You can then assign a modulation source, and for this I'm going to use another LFO. And let's just say over the course of a bar, we'll just have it slow down. So let's just assign that and set a good rate. You can also fine-tune the amounts from the Matrix tab, which allows you to fine-tune all the modulations. Or let's say if you wanted it to speed up, you just do the opposite curve. So that concludes today's video. And in the next one, we'll be talking more about harmonics and how to generate harmonics and how to shape harmonics. But until then, I hope you enjoyed or learned something. And I'll see you on the next one.